Last time I worked on Delfino Square, I made a few improvements to the trees and the buildings. I made the trees more colorful and put up some balconies with flowers and ivy. My original plan this week was to create a new version of the forest that used to be here, and a shortcut running through it. But before doing that, I want to make the trees look better. You guys said they could use some more orange color, so I used an inner glow of orange on the leaf textures. This makes the trees look a little less like blobs of yellow. I'm not convinced that these trees are perfect still, but I think that this is an improvement. With the threat of having to work on the trees any further still looming in the background, I was ready to start working on the shortcut. I deleted this grass plane since it doesn't actually connect to the buildings. The old forest was just something to look at from the outside, but this new forest is going to be more fleshed out. Now that this grass is sitting about right, I started making an entrance to the shortcut. I also planned out how the shortcut is going to work. It's going to be a dirt path, going right from this left turn, cutting through the park, and re-entering through this left turn. On either side will be 3D trees and some park scenery, and a flat image of a forest facing inward from either side in the distance. Then I'll have a couple of layers facing outward to keep you from seeing this shortcut from the outside at a bad angle. Nice. Now I can spend half an hour making a nice entrance to the shortcut using these crappy outdated buildings that I'm gonna delete later anyways. Then I'll be able to make that forest park with those trees that I'm hardly even 50-50 on. That's about when I realized that this whole shortcut idea might be a little too soon. It's kinda disappointing, but I know it'll look way better if I pay more attention to the rest of the track first. Starting with the buildings. I've been in denial that this building texture is a lost cause. I've used filters, made normal maps, and covered them in balconies, but I think it's finally time to get rid of them and find another solution. Now don't worry, that doesn't mean that last episode was a waste of time. I can still use the balconies on some of the new buildings. But how are we gonna make these new buildings? Well, first, I've gotta find something that looks like it could become a Delfino Square building with a little bit of work. Something that isn't too far from the look of the original buildings. And I think I've found just what I'm looking for in Toad Harbor. While I set this up, I should bring up the whole Super Mario Sunshine element of this track. A lot of people have been wanting to see more Mario Sunshine representation, since that's where this track's inspiration originally lies. But first and foremost, I want to serve the feeling of the original track, not its inspiration. I'm sure I'll add some sunshine references where possible, but I won't be replacing the autumn trees with palm trees, or anything like that. But you know, that could be something fun to do at some point, to revisit the model or others that I've made and retheme them in some way. Anyways, I think this building's turning out pretty good. I'll need to make a gray building as well, and some different yellow buildings, since this piece is pretty inflexible with the protruding end segment. So I cut off that end segment, reused some materials, and changed the windows a bit. Now we can start fitting things together. One thing I'll do to make these buildings look better than the old ones is to keep them all level, because I don't know about you, but living life at a 26-degree angle doesn't sound any fun. But to keep the buildings level on a hill means elevating them quite a bit in this case. So I'll need to make a foundation block underneath the building, and I put some stairs on the outside too, so residents don't have to take the plunge every time they leave their homes. I'm gonna need some shorter buildings as well, so I made a short version of this gray building, placed it around, and made a yellow version too. It's important to note that the previous buildings were just a shape following along a path with a convenient tiling texture on it, but using actual separated buildings means I'm gonna have to mess with things a bit to make everything fit properly. While setting this area up, I decided to make some basic buildings behind the main ones. These rooftops should make this feel a bit more like a small city and not just a hallway of buildings. This is starting to look good. I unhid the balconies for a moment to see how they'd look. Clearly, it's going to take some work refitting them, but when they're properly adjusted, they look nice. I carried on placing buildings, and ran into a bit of a problem. This building here isn't quite wide enough to occupy this space, but I can't really refit it to that size without the proportions getting a little bit screwy with the way that the beams are set up. So instead, I ended up leaving a little bit of space between the building and the wall, and creating an alleyway there. It sort of made me realize that many of my favorite details in Mario Kart tracks or other games could have been equally practical solutions to equally stupid problems. Now I can set up some buildings in this fountain area, which is more of the same process. After that's all done, I'm pretty much done replacing the buildings. I went ahead and put up another row of buildings here where the park's gonna be. Looking around, I'm starting to see where to take things next. I updated some textures around the clock building, which I think really helped. I can see this statue's gonna need some work. That's something I'll have to do another time. But before I'm done here, I can make this grass look a little more vibrant in Photoshop. Hopefully this will help the track look more colorful since it started looking a little bit desaturated. I also replaced the skybox with a bluer, less cloudy one. This is a good start. Well, that's gonna have to do it. These buildings are looking a lot better. I think this project is going really well so far. It's been really great getting feedback from you guys, mostly about the trees. I've also learned a whole bunch of Blender stuff from comments. Anyways, I appreciate you watching. Thanks.